ті, хто залишився і вирішив зостатися з нами до кінця секції «Індустрія» нашого ювілейного кінофестивалю. Зараз я запрошую на цю сцену Мераві Ґеріма, нашого крайнього спікера. Він є режисером-документалістом зі Сполучених Штатів Америки. І він буде говорити на тему, яку ми навіть не перекладали, «Greenlight yourself». По суті, це про те, як самому собі дати зелене світло, аби знімати кіно. Просто йти і знімати. І він буде на власному прикладі і на прикладі своєї першої та вже дуже успішної документальної стрічки «Residue» залишок, яка була показана тут декілька разів, буде розповідати про те, як цього досягти. В нього велике прохання до вас зайняти ось ці перші стільчики, тому що він хоче зробити це максимально інтерактивним і дуже домашнім. Це буде дуже відкрите спілкування. Він буде ставити вам запитання, тому... Okay, Meravі, we need to sit here for the camera because it's online, so, I think, do you want to sit here or move the chairs? Up to you. Let's just move it here, maybe. Okay. So, it's going to be in English, just saying. And yeah, I think we can start. I gave you a nice intro, I think. Yeah. So yeah, what I'd like to start with you is we have a bit of a plan. Explain the topic. I gave a very brief one-sentence explanation, but hearing it from you, what is Greenlight yourself? How do you describe it? Yeah, it's working.
Hello, everybody. So one, thank you for having me, and thank you for that excellent introduction. I could tell it was nice. So as was already said, my name is Meravі Ґеріма. I'm a filmmaker from Washington, D.C., and it has always been my interest since I have gotten into film to be able to move a project along at any stage of the process, no matter what. And like another way to say that is that like I think that a lot of times filmmakers get caught up in basically because there's no money, the project waits. Everybody, you've heard of this happening, or it has happened to you as a filmmaker on your own project. Because you don't have money, the project is sitting and waiting. And to me, that's what I like to avoid, at all costs, is to basically allow myself or find ways to move a project along, and so that's what Greenlight yourself really kind of comes out of, in a very basic sense. We'll of course get into more details, but if I could start with a quote by a filmmaker I really respect. It is that basically, it's two quotes. One is, you have no excuse not to write your story, right? At the very least. And the second one is, which builds on the first one, is, by writing your story, you basically activate your own history-making potential, as just a regular person on this earth. Your own potential to make history begins with you writing your story, you taking it upon yourself to move forward, without anybody giving you permission, without anybody giving you anything, So that's kind of what this comes out of, and that's what this is all about.
Okay. By the way, if you have any questions along the way, you just shoot openly, trying to make it a discussion. So my question that I'm going to shoot now for you is, so you said about, making, waking up your storytelling and bringing up the story that you have in life. What is your background? Where did you come from? Because you mentioned yesterday at the panel discussion that, it's your parents who had a big impact on you. So could you tell us a bit more about how you came to be a documentary filmmaker?
So my parents are both independent filmmakers. you know, they basically work outside of the studio system, and they find ways to make, you know, films happen that they think are important to the community, rather than doing films that they think may make a lot of money. You know what I mean? And that's two very different ways of filmmaking, because as we know, filmmaking is very expensive, you know? And so oftentimes the main mode of filmmaking is very, you know, capital driven. You know, what film story can make money, rather than what film stories, you know, can be helpful, healing, you know, progressive, you know, historically necessary, you know, whatever. And so, yeah, I mean, my earliest memories as a child was on a film set in Jamaica, for example, where my parents were shooting a film about revolution during slavery times, right? And so, you know, in my memories, it was just sugarcane and horses and other things like that. But once I got older, you know, it is a whole film which they have shot, which, you know, they're now attempting to find distribution. And basically, it's a great film, but at the same time, because, you know, in the United States, maybe you're familiar, maybe you're not, but it's an incredibly racist place. And I think that, like, for a black film about revolution during slavery time in the United States, it was almost impossible that they would find distribution. And so basically, they had to find ways to distribute the film themselves. And maybe raise your hand if you know anything about distribution or self-distribution about films, or have had any experience trying to show a film, or that you have seen a film, for example, outside of a movie theater. Maybe it wasn't a big blockbuster film, you know. Has anybody seen small films that weren't big budget? Yeah? A few? Okay. So that's the point, is that these small films, a lot of times, we don't see them often. And when we do see them, it is because a lot of hard work went into by the filmmakers finding a way to show you that film, because distribution is one of the most difficult aspects, you know, of the filmmaking process. You know, you can spend a lot of time making a movie, you know what I mean, and then spend even more time trying to find it, you know, trying to get it distributed, you know. And so, especially for black filmmakers in the United States, it's very difficult. So, as a child, I was watching them self-distribute this film across the country. And the reason that's important is because it requires a certain mindset, which is basically you stop at nothing to achieve this goal. You literally stop at nothing. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong, you know. From theaters refusing to show your film to, you know, people being sent to the wrong place, or money, or not having enough, you know, money to like open in a movie theater. But what they were able to do was to get in every black city across the United States, a whole community of people who felt that this film was so important to them that they put their own money forward. This is like regular folks, regular working class folks who brought their own money together to rent out movie theaters to show my parents' films, which is a complete reversal of this distribution process, which is, oh, you go to a studio or a big distributor, they put their money to, you know, show your film. This is the other way around, the people putting money forward, you know what I'm saying, to like bring a film to show it to a community. I mean, to their own community. And to me, that's a very revolutionary process, which I learned a lot from just watching. And so when it came time for me as a filmmaker to make my first film, you know, and then come against the same, you know, similar obstacles, you know, to making, you know, feature films are, you know, it's a very big process, a very, you know, kind of complicated kind of thing, whatever. And it feels like too much, you know, especially as a film student. The thought of, you know, you can make short films, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, but the thought of making a feature film, you know, an hour and a half, 2 hour films, it just feels like too much. You know, oftentimes it's very scary, you know, it's very, it just, yeah, it's discouraging. Everybody you talk to, they tell you, oh, you can't make a feature film for less than $1 million. You can't make this without, you know, this type of money or this type of production or this type of equipment. And so there's nothing but obstacles when it comes to making a feature film. It's nothing but obstacles. And so that's what this is about. And I think that my parents' example was just important for me to see people who were willing to find ways around every single obstacle, you know, finding a way around the obstacle in order to make the film happen. So that's the background that I come out of.
I think it's, if anybody has anything to say or comment at this point, we can screen the trailer so that we have the basis in which we can build a discussion and the example of your own film and how your parents' experience, you know, impacted your work. So if we can play the trailer now.
Ni a sabios ni a ricos, solo quiero.
These white folks gonna paint over the city like we never existed. Paint right over us. I'm trying to tell this story for you. I'm trying to tell this story for Dion, for Demetri.
You ain't that important. You ain't saving nobody. Damn sure ain't saving me. So don't act all sad now. Don't forget you left us. Where was you at? You wasn't here. You was out Cali living a life while we in the city trying to survive. You come back in the city now and talk about something where Demetri said like you really care. You ain't care. You ain't care about yourself.
Hey, is this your truck? Yeah. Turn the music down. The music's too loud. Don't make me have to call the cops.
Okay.
Thank you.
So now that we've seen a bit of it, the question is, how did you get the initial idea, and how did you come to a point when you woke up and thought, I need to make this film?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. And Washington, D.C., which is, people may know as the capital city of the United States, is also a majority black city. And it's very special, it's very unique, but you would never know that it was black by watching films, you know, Hollywood and all these kinds of things, because the only films that you can find about DC are about the politics, the politicians, people who don't live there, you know, who are from somewhere else. And there are very few filmmakers from Washington, D.C. itself making films about D.C. And so that's kind of one important point. The other important point is that Washington, D.C. is undergoing an intense amount of gentrification. And gentrification is basically where property values are skyrocketing beyond the ability of the people who have always lived there to be able to afford. And so black people in D.C. can no longer afford to live in D.C. and are being displaced and pushed out to who knows where. And so what that looks like is, you know, for me, you know, I went to film school in Los Angeles in 2015. And when I went to film school, this was you know, I was away. I mean, film school was 3 years, but I was away for, you know, for my first year. I didn't come home to DC for a whole year. You know, I was gone for a whole year. And basically, in 1 year, the city changes. It changed a lot. It has been changing since 2010. I mean, since before, since, you know, early 2000s. It's been changing for a long time. But the amount that it changes, if you're in the city, you can notice it. But if you leave and come back after a whole year, it's really disorienting. You know, it's really a lot of change. And so you can be, you know, in your own neighborhood where you grew up, where your family is from, where your community is from, and not recognize anything. The buildings change, the landscapes change, the streets change, the people change, and suddenly you feel like, I don't recognize this place. I don't know, you know, in my own birthplace, I don't feel, you know, I don't recognize it physically, but not only that, the people who have come, you know, this new population who has moved into my neighborhood clearly doesn't want me here either, you know? And so it's a very antagonistic, hostile relationship between the natives, you know, people who have been there, and then people who have come in. And so there's this antagonism that's there. So basically, you know, maybe it's happening here in Ukraine. I'm sure in some neighborhoods it's basically the movement of money, you know what I mean, at the end of the day. But especially in Washington, D.C., it is very racial, you know, it's very intense, and it is everywhere. And so basically Residue was the idea that I got when I first came home after a year away in film school. Residue was you know, I knew I wanted to do a feature film, but when I came home and I couldn't recognize anything, I was very angry, I was very frustrated, and I was looking for a way to do something, you know what I mean, rather than just, I don't know, just be angry. And so it became very important to start writing this script. Now, that's the first part, which is I have the story idea. I want to make it a feature film. I'm in my first year of, I'm going into my second year of film school. I don't have any money, but the situation in DC is so crazy that there's no time to wait. You know, there's no time to look for money. There's no time to, you know, write a perfect script. There's no time to find the quote unquote best actors or best crew. None of that. There's only enough time to, you know, to say, okay, this is what I did. I want to shoot this film next year. I want to begin production by next summer. So starting now, I'm going to start writing. I went back to school, and I was taking classes, and then, you know, after classes, I was writing. And then the following summer, you know, in 1 year, we begin production no matter what. Whatever that means, we begin production. Whether it means we're shooting on a cell phone, which many people do now, whether it means we're shooting on a DSLR or whatever with no actors, maybe I'm playing every role, or who knows, you know what I mean? No matter what, we start shooting. And so that was very important for me to just set a date, you know what I mean? And I'd encourage anybody here who has an idea, a film that they want to you know, a story that they want to tell, a film that they want to make, whether it's a short film or a feature film, a documentary, you know, maybe it's a play, who knows? If it feels too big, not, you know, most likely it's not too big, it's very possible. And in many ways, the first step is to just set a date, you know, just to look at your calendar and just say, I would like to start shooting by this year or by this summer or by this day. And then you force yourself to fill in everything else. And we'll go into the details of how, but to me, that's the first step.
How much, I'm just going to deviate a bit, how much did the film school help? Because we had so many discussions today and previous days of whether you need education, formal education at least, or not.
Well, I'll tell you right now, two things. I don't think film school is important. You know, I don't think it's necessary. I think that everything that I learned at the school that I went to, well, first let me start by telling you everything. I went to USC in Los Angeles, and if you Google, you know, best film schools in the world, you know, which is like the first thing people do when they're looking for a film school. In fact, I had a homie from Ukraine who went to film school with me, Sophia. It would have been cool if she's here, but she's actually in the States. But the first thing you do is Google that, and 9 times out of 10, the first, you know, film name that you see is either, you know, USC or NYU or AFI or some combination. And one is because, you know, they put a lot of money into making sure that their name pops up first, you know. And they put a lot of money into this mythology that film school is needed, which is really, you know, is really problematic because you go to film school, like me and everybody else who got in, and then, you know, when you graduate, you have usually at least $100,000 of debt, you know, that you have to find a way to pay off. I owe $250,000 of debt because you can't just go and then, I mean, you can go and then drop out, but when you're there, you just feel like you want more, you need more, and you'll find a way to pay it off because they sell this dream that you'll be the next Steven Spielberg, you'll be the next George Lucas, you know, you'll make the next Star Wars. And maybe one out of several hundred people will get to that point. The rest of us will be working class filmmakers the rest of our lives, you know, making films here and there or working some way, maybe a cinematographer or sound person, whatever, which is all good. But you still have the same amount of debt that it will take lifetimes to pay. You know, this is the type of debt that you cannot pay off in one life, you know? But I think that, like, it's very important to say the skills, the knowledge of storytelling, you know, the most important elements are things that you learn by making films, by writing scripts, by shooting, you know, by actually going into production or post-production or whatever, any stage, and actually doing that thing. I think that, like, teachers can be helpful. You know, you can have access to maybe some technology which is too expensive for you to afford out of pocket. But then you have to ask yourself, you know, is it worth that much money? You know, I think if you go to a film school that's affordable or they pay, you know, they give you tuition, scholarship, then, okay, it can start to make sense. But in the United States, in the context that I'm very familiar with, you know, they don't give a lot of money. There's not a lot of scholarship money out there. And so in many ways, you are just, you're taking a lot of debt, a lot of life-changing debt. You know what I mean? I think that there's other ways to do it. You know, go on set, meet people, work on films, write your own stories. To me, the best film school, you want to ask me, was Residue. The best film school was making Residue. You know what I mean? It was just like, we made so many mistakes, but we learned so much. We shot over 2 summers, the summer of 2017, the summer of 2018. And if you could just see the difference between us on the first summer versus the second summer, we were so good the second summer, you know what I mean? But the first summer, we were just so slow, we were messing up, people hated us, the crew hated us, everybody was fighting, you know what I mean? It was intense, it was just crazy, but we learned so much because it was just, you know, it was a learning environment, you know what I mean? We didn't have any producers telling us what to do, no studio telling us what to do. It was just us figuring it out, you know? So if you really want to learn how to make a film, I encourage you to shoot 4 or 5 short films and then attempt a feature film. And that's the best film school you could ask for. And by the way, nobody ever in your entire life will ever ask you what film school you went to or what degree that you have to be a filmmaker. Nobody cares. They want to know what film you have. What can you show me where I can see, you know, your skills if I'm looking to hire you. That's my opinion on film schools. Sorry.
How did you attract people? How do you ignite people and bring them into the project that potentially doesn't have kind of any money and in most cases will not bring any money? So how does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really important question. I think that, like, one, for the most central core group of collaborators, you know, your cinematographer, your producer, your assistant director. One, I think that you have to attract people who can find something in the process, you know, who can find something in this for themselves as well. You know, you cannot rely on people who are doing you a favor, for example, right? Oh, I did this for you, can you do this for me? It has to be people who almost selfishly are getting something out of the process for themselves. And what that means is, you know, a cinematographer, for example, for us, it was very important for him to grow, right? To get better as a cinematographer, to sharpen his blade, to work on a feature film. For him, he had also just graduated. His name is Mark Jeevarutnam, our cinematographer on this project. He had just graduated from AFI, another film school in LA, and he had a lot of questions. He had a lot of problems with film school too. You know, he was just like really looking for an opportunity, one, to unlearn, you know what I mean, a lot of things that he felt that he had learned in film school. He wanted to unlearn them. But two, he wanted to practice, you know, the craft. He wanted to, as he said, you know, stay sharp, you know, take off the cobwebs, you know. And so for him, someone who was doing a feature film, a big project, you know what I mean? The story was there, the script is there. It was very exciting for him because now he could really practice all these things which he wanted to practice, which is very important. The same for our assistant director. We had two different assistant directors on both summers. The first summer was another filmmaker a woman who wanted to direct, Callie Nicole Lyons. She wants to, you know, she wanted to be a filmmaker also. I knew her from school, but I think that it's important to say that, like, this is somebody I could have met on a film set, you know, for example, on another project. To answer your question is, you have to go to where films are being made, you know, film sets, and, you know, if in the United States, you know, New York or whatever, and then find people who have this type of energy and who want to grow in that way. Of course, it helps if you have money to be able to pay people. But if you don't, also, it's very important to be able to connect with people on these things which are not money, are not fame or success, but is actually people who are inspired and compelled by something deeper, which is growth, you know what I mean? Wanting to make us, you know, to bring this story to life if it's a story that matters to them. For example, this story is about my neighborhood. This is about the neighborhood in DC where I grew up at. And for the actors, you know, the main actor, he's from Washington, D.C., but he's not from my neighborhood. But for him, he wants to act. He wants a chance to grow and to be in a film. So he was very excited about the film. But everybody else almost is from my neighborhood. And for them, it was, oh, you're shooting a movie about Q Street, you know? You're shooting a movie about Washington, D.C.? You know, it's a black film, I'm making a film about black D.C. Whatever you want. You know, I give you anything, any way I can help you, let me know. You know what I mean? That was the type of energy that we were getting, because people are very excited to, like, help bring these stories to life, especially in places where these stories are not being told. You know what I'm saying? So there's many different levels on which to reach people. Of course, if the movie makes money, everybody should make a cut. You know, if the movie makes money, everybody should get paid. You know, all these things have to be in place, you know, or you have to be ready to, like, to make the film as equitable, you know what I mean, as equal as possible financially, because you don't want to take advantage of people. But at the same time, if a group of people come together and say, we want to make a film, we don't have money, they should still find a way to make the film. You know what I mean? They should still be able to find a way to make the film. That's what I believe. And so what we say is, what we didn't have in money and resources, we made up for in community power, right? And so that was how we cast, that's how we found crew, that's how we did everything.
If I may ask, how did you find, what was the budget, and how did you walk around that?
Yeah, so basically the first summer we had maybe 7,000, and the second summer was about the same, and that's enough to feed people. So your main costs, things that you do have to pay for, you have to take care of people, you have to make sure that everybody's fed well, you have to make sure that everybody has a place to stay, you know what I mean, transportation. If people are giving you their time, they shouldn't have to pay for anything at all, you know what I mean? They should be able to focus on the project as few hours as necessary and go home, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's our golden rule, actually. If you don't pay people for coming and working for you, feed them as well as you can.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, we had, like, we were eating real good. We had, like, my sister catered the first summer. The second summer, my cousin was catering. And she's like a chef, like vegan food, you know what I mean? So, it was amazing. But still, you know what I'm saying? Like, insurance, you know, for example, we had a good camera that our cinematographer was able to go to the rental house, like a Airy Alexa rental house, for example, in the United States, because he used to work there. And he was like, okay, you know, I used to work here. Now it's my time. I'm shooting a film. I'm a student. Do you have any? We shot on an Alexa Classic, which is the year that we shot was 7 or 8 years old. right? So to them, it's an old camera. Everybody wants to shoot on the new Alexa. So these cameras are just sitting on the shelf collecting dust. You know what I mean? And so he was able to ask them, will you donate one to our project? Cool. So they gave it to us for 2 weeks. And so, you know, we found like very interesting solutions like that, but you still had to pay for insurance. And it's not cheap. You know, well, it actually was cheap, but for us it wasn't cheap, you know. So insurance is a cost, and food, transportation, but food is the biggest cost. So $15,000 total to get the film made. And then, a lot of people don't talk about this, but it cost another $10,000 basically after it was made for festivals and distribution. Because
all the fees, right?
Fees, yeah. Insurance, again. You know, when you have a film that's done, that's ready, you know, you're not finished yet. You have to, basically, your distributor will ask you, you know what I mean, do you have insurance for the film? You know what I mean? And it's not cheap. It's several thousand, you know, US dollars. So yeah, another 10,000. So the total was 25,000, yeah. But yeah, so like, you know, my greatest wish is like the film makes, I mean, it's, who knows, you know what I mean? Your first film, just know up front, it's not gonna make a lot of money, you know what I mean? And that's okay. It's really just to, you know, show what you and your crew can do, you know what I mean? Which is fine, you know. But if it does make money, you should split, you know, equally. Everybody should also come up with that. So that's kind of like my idea for, you know, the basic technical details, you know, of how we got it done.
Before we dive into what happened after you made the film, technical questions. How much time did it take to shoot? How many people were involved into that during those 2 summers?
It was a good amount of people involved. I don't know how many off the top of my head, but I would say that on, you know, every shooting day, for example, we would have about 10 people on set with cast and crew. So it's a small crew and, you know, small cast, but sometimes we have a lot of cast on set, you know, so about maybe at the most 15 people on set.
Shooting days? Shooting days?
Yeah, I'm like, I feel like it was, in total, I want to, in terms of how many people were involved, less than 100 people. I mean, we had about 40 people in the cast. And, yeah. Crew was about that much total. I don't know. We had, crew was maybe less. I don't know. But anyway, so we shot for 2 weeks in 2017. And we shot for 1 more week in 2018. So the reason is because basically when I finished the script, it was the next summer and it was time to begin shooting. And basically the script was not really complete. You know, it was the first draft. It's very bad, you know what I mean? It had many issues, but at the time, I couldn't tell. It looked good to me, you know what I mean? So I was ready to shoot, and it became clear, you know, after we shot it, you know, when I went back to school and I was looking over the footage, trying to start editing, that it wasn't done, right? That we needed to come back again the next summer to shoot some more for pickups and stuff like that. And so basically we organized another shoot for pickups and then we began shooting, you know, whatever. So that's kind of, you know, why we came back another week, the second summer, to shoot more. And important things were shot in the second summer, like the ending, you know, things like that. So yeah.
And then the question is, you know, a cliche phrase, but the film is made 3 times, you know, and when you write, when you shoot, and then when you edit. How much did you have, first question, how much did you have to maybe adapt or additionally shoot because the you know, the script, as you figured out later, wasn't, you know, could be better?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the first one.
No, absolutely. I mean, like, that to me is one of the most, like, beautiful parts about it is that I learned that, like, you don't have to have a perfect script, you know? Yeah. Like, you can have an incomplete script and begin shooting.
Greenlight yourself. Yeah.
Greenlight yourself on an incomplete script, and the film in many ways will force you to really address these issues in the story as you're shooting. You know, you can tell when a scene is not working, whether, you know, because in the scene itself something is missing, or in the sequence a scene is missing. And so you're like, okay, well, I think we need a scene in which we show this thing, you know? So then you add it, even though it wasn't in the script, then you go shoot it. Another important aspect of having an incomplete script is that it was very flexible, you know? Like, it was very flexible. You know, it wasn't like, oh, the script is perfect, let's shoot everything exactly as it is. It was like, oh, this is trash, you know, let's remove that scene, let's add this one, and let's just kind of, you know, in many ways, what we call it is really kind of authoring on the fly, or writing on the fly, or writing as you shoot. You know, because you do have to address these glaring issues in the story. You know, we wasted a lot of time shooting things that never even made it into the film. But fortunately, we were able to get many things. Sometimes shooting something without even knowing how it would be used, you know. The film opens with it was a protest that happened in Washington, D.C. in 2019. I was editing the film at the time, but the protest began. So I went down with my camera and shot it, not knowing how it would be in the film or why I was even shooting it. But as I was editing, it became clear that I could use that footage to start the film. So that's kind of how it happened.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
And then the second question you already answered.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah. No, it's fine.
And the other part of that is, once you shoot it, you know, so you have this incomplete script, then you have this incomplete footage, you know what I mean? You have this footage which doesn't go together perfectly, you know? You have to find a way to make it make sense. And so, like you said, you know, in the editing, again, is another draft, you know, of the story. And so it's a very rewarding process, you know, of development as you go, imperfect development, you know?
So regarding the editing and this imperfection that you can turn into something, you know, that looks finalized, you edited it yourself, you just said, right? How much did it change, or how much did you manage to compile a properly well-seamed story while you were editing?
What do you mean, like?
So you said that the first draft of the script was like not that good. Then you started shooting and it became better. And then when you started editing, how much better and more complete did it get when you were editing?
Yeah, I mean, by the time, like when I started editing, of course I felt like it was terrible. I felt like I had wasted everybody's time. I felt like it was just a bad movie. I felt like, you know, it was a failure. But then as you start, you know, moving and, you know, adding things, it starts to show itself and it starts to show its potential. And it just starts getting better and better and better, you know. It took me about a year and a half, almost 2 years to edit. And basically it went through many phases, you know. It went through many stages of the process, you know, of trying to make it make sense. And so the editing, to me, it was almost one of my favorite stages, because it's really the point at which the story, the film itself begins to show you what it wants to be, you know? And it's a really beautiful way. You just show up, you know? As long as you kind of just show up, you know, every day to your computer and just start moving the mouse, the film will give you little gifts, you know what I mean? It'll give you little presents, you know, if your mouse, you know, accidentally slips, you know, or you hit the wrong button on the keyboard and the image flips, you know, or something happens, you know, these accidents which kind of give you a new perspective on the film begin to happen, you know, or you start to see sequences differently than you did before. And I think that it starts to, you know, the first scene that I really edited well, and which I felt was what I wanted the film to be, and the first scene that I edited that felt successful was the ending. And so when I got the ending and it was like, okay, this is the movie, then I started editing backwards from there, you know, and just really editing the scenes to feel like they were driving towards the ending, you know? So for me, the structure of the film is like a blade, like a wedge, you know, a triangle going to a point, you know? And if the ending is the point, right? So the whole film is kind of like going, you know, the way I decided if a scene felt right was if it was moving in that direction. You know what I mean? So like, I know it's like a weird way to say it, but basically, yes, you know, just it gets better in the edit.
Okay, so you edited it. And then the big question that we started with is the distribution. What were your steps? Who did you talk to? What ways you thought of?
Well, before I go, can I say one last thing about the
Absolutely.
editing?
Go ahead.
Because we're talking about like greenlighting yourself, and like the idea of this is basically the reason I think it's important to edit your own films is because, you know, you become better as a storyteller, you become better as a director, you become better as a writer when you edit. But at the same time, I think it's also important to know how to edit, because at no point do you ever want, again, the film to be waiting around, you know, because you can't find the editor. How many filmmakers do you know who just have all this footage looking for an editor, waiting for it to be done? But like for me, it's like, no, like I don't want any aspect of the filmmaking process to be, you know, something that I can't do in an emergency, you know, if I have to, you know. So I want to learn. I want to know how to shoot. I want to know how to, you know, produce. I want to know how to do sound. In fact, while I was directing, I was doing sound. I was the boom
That's very
operator
hard.
while I was directing, and mixing while I was directing, because we couldn't find a sound person, you know, in time. But if I didn't have that skill set, we would have been in trouble, you know. And so I think that like I want to know everything about filmmaking, not because I want to do it all myself, but because I don't want anything to stop me if I don't know how to do it, you know, in an emergency. And that comes from watching my parents, again, struggle to make their films. But that's what I want to say about editing. Every aspect should be something that you know how to do at least, you know, if this is the type of filmmaking, you know, that interests you.
Okay. Did you color yourself, the film, the palettes? Did you know, the color correct?
Our cinematographer colored it.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mixed it, the audio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The post-production question, the sort of distribution question. How did it happen? Like, what was your initial plan, and did it come to fruition after you, or you kind of came across the obstacles that you couldn't predict? What was the?
Yeah. So for us, it's on Netflix now, but you know, that kind of just happened. Basically, what happened is we got into a film festival in the United States called Slam Dance Film Festival, which is an excellent festival. They took our film, and while it was there, we reached out to a distributor called Array. Array is an incredible distributor also in the United States, headed by Ava DuVernay, and they really select, you know, they release, you know, 6 basically independent feature films a year, you know, 5 or 6 a year or whatever, and they put them directly on Netflix. So when they picked us up, it was just automatic, right? But
Did you choose them? Oh no, how'd you get in touch? Did somebody recommend? What was the way?
No, distributors, you can reach out. You know, often distributors want to see completed films, you know. So we figured they would be in town because Slam Dance.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an excellent film festival, and also there's 2 film festivals happening at the same time. Slam Dance, and then down the street, Sundance is happening. And so basically, we figured that they would be in town, so we just emailed them and asked them, you know, invite them to the screening, you know, if you know, whatever, send them a trailer and synopsis. And so they came, you know, and they enjoyed the film. They were, you know, they enjoyed the way the audience reacted to the film. They're like watching all these things, and they decided that they would pick it up. And yeah, I mean, they released it in September. But you know, I think it was important to say, and like I'll tell you now, that like while we were making the film, we weren't thinking about Slam Dance, Sundance, or Netflix, you know, or Array. It was mostly about what, you know, how do we make the film that we want to make, you know, the best film that we can make about Washington, D.C. And I want to say that because I think that a lot of times independent filmmakers, we get caught up in wanting our film to go to Sundance, you know, or some big film festival, you know what I mean? As amazing as Molodist is, you know, Molodist should not be the festival which you're thinking about as you're creating. You know, it should be about your process, you know, because once you start, you know, writing, for example, for a festival, you know, I went to school with some folks, you know, a lot of students who they begin writing by a certain date because they want production to begin by a certain date because they want the film to be done in time for Sundance's submission deadline, right? So from the very beginning, you know, the film is basically a mousetrap for a Sundance programmer. You know what I'm saying? What do they like? What type of stories? You know, what kind of this? You know what I mean? So
It's a very wrong motivation.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the truth is, the Sundance programmers or Mulladis programmers, they know when the film is made like that. They can tell when they're being, you know, enticed or whatever, you know. And so I think that like the best thing that you can do is remove all those factors. As you know, it's a constant process of removing this voice, you know, from your head, which always comes back, you know, which always tries to guide your pen in a certain direction. But you always have to fight against that to just really return to the most honest, you know, story that you can tell, you know, about whatever it is that you chose.
Okay. Do I have any questions, by the way? Ladies first, go ahead.
First and foremost, thanks for being here. I would like two questions. The first one, you mentioned that after being like away from home for the whole year, you came back and something made you like angry and furious. And there must like have been something really powerful to change your idea from fiction into documentary. Like what was it? Because it's not like to change from, I don't know, from comedy into rom-comedy. Like really, there is the difference between these two genres.
No, it didn't change from fiction to documentary. It is a fiction film, but it's based on my life. You know, it's very autobiographical, and so if you watch it, basically you'll see it's about a filmmaker. It's about a filmmaker who comes home to make a film about his neighborhood, which is what I was doing. I was a filmmaker coming home to make a film about my neighborhood. And so it's basically just about that process in a very like interesting way, you know. And it has certain documentary elements, you know what I mean? So like because we came to a place which is changing so quickly, everything is changing in this process of gentrification. It was important for us to document the changes as we, you know, as we were shooting. So we're shooting the movie, and then something happens over here. We turn the camera and just get that thing, you know what I mean? And put it in the movie as if we planned it, as if we wrote it, you know, but it's actually something that happened in real life. And so there's a lot of documentary style footage that just fit right in to the story. But in terms of just kind of like what happened, it was, you know, basically, like I said, you know, it was very frustrating. And the things that were happening were basically about me not being able to recognize my home. And then also, you know, these new people who come into the city, basically having to confrontations, you know, with them, you know, about the city. And so it was very, it was almost, it was just like, I'll leave it there. Yeah.
Okay. I think we have a second question. Okay, let's do the second question.
And the second one is about the difference between like working with the cast who is like rented, like hired, not rented, hired, and like those who just like fight for idea. Is there the difference? Because I know that sometimes those who make like even videos, they faced with the trouble that those who are your friends and they help you, they are a little bit more relaxed. They are responsible, they know that they help you, but like still they are a little bit like not so into the process. They think that like if you are my friend, I'm helping you, you can get it and like we will definitely do the thing you need, but like still. No,
it's true. You know, I think that like a lot of times like I said, our main actor, our main character was an actor. He was, from like the theater, and he wanted to do a film, and he was very excited about this. I didn't know him before this project. I met him as part of the casting, and so he brought that energy. He came to set every day, with everything that he needed. He was on time. He was always prepared. He's very high level, kind of because he had that excitement. And like you said, there were some people who were just like my friends or from the neighborhood, neighbors. And like, I'm like, okay, you want to be in a movie? They're like, yeah, I want to be in a movie. I'm like, okay, we're going to be shooting, here tomorrow, 10 a.m. See you there. Make sure you're on time. And then we get there with the camera and everything, and like people don't show up, you know what I mean? Or like, so it's just the main character, and we're just sitting there just waiting for them, waiting. But, in this example that I'm talking about, which actually happened, it was too bad, they didn't show up. But 2 other people were just walking down the street, and I was just like, hey, y'all want to be in a movie? And they were like, yeah, you know what I mean? Of course, and so they just came in and they acted in the part, and that was it. There was another character, this woman who was supposed to play a very important role, very emotional role, everything, and I didn't really even, I wasn't sure that she was the right person for the role, but she looked, she was supposed to be the mother of one of the characters, right? And she looked like his mother, so I casted her because we had no choice, like you also, it was, I cast her. But the day of the shooting, she didn't show up. And there's like no people walking down the street, you know what I'm saying? Except my mom, who was there helping my sister to bring food and cater and stuff for the crew. And I'm looking at my mom, and I'm looking at the guy who we need a mother for. I'm just like, okay, all right, close enough, So I was like, Mom, like, would you, I need you to act in this scene. And it's a very emotional scene. It was very stressful because it was about to rain, and we wanted to shoot it in the rain. And the rain was coming, you know what I mean? And so she was like, no. She was like, no, like, she wanted to go get in her car and go find the lady. But we don't know where the lady is. We don't know nothing about her. So I was like, no, like, for real, like, we need you right now because we have to shoot it now. Like, the rain is coming. Like, this is the only chance we have. So finally she was like, okay, and she did it. But I want to say that, like, the reason that she didn't want to do it is not because she was shy or, like, nervous or because she can't act. She's actually a very good actor. She didn't want to do it because this was a very emotional scene about something which had actually happened in my neighborhood, And my mother and my father were both, amongst all the parents, in the neighborhood, who were fighting very hard, to keep everything together. You know what I mean? When a lot of things were going wrong in Washington, D.C. especially, and a lot of the youth were being lost left and right, young people. These are like kids that like my mother and my father helped raise, you know what I'm saying? Who were just, becoming victims to many different causes. And so for her, it was very personal, you know what I mean? It's very, very personal. I think that like to ask her to relive this moment, it was just asking a lot, you know what I mean? But she did it, you know what I mean? And, God bless her. If you watch the film, it's the scene in the rain, which you'll see. But yeah, it's absolutely true.
We have one more question. Sorry, a second mic got lost. Oh, there it is.
So, hello. I might have missed something, but how did your movie manage to be on Netflix?
Yeah, you did miss it. No, I'm joking. So we were basically picked up for distribution. Can y'all hear me? By a distribution company named Array. And Array is in the United States. It's a small it's a small distribution company with high output. You know, they really do put out a lot of amazing stuff, and they have a big footprint. You know what I mean? And so basically, they have a deal with Netflix, which allows them to put films directly onto Netflix. So anything that they pick up, they'll do. So they put out 6 films a year directly onto Netflix. And last year, Residue was one of them.
Okay, thank you. And the second question of mine. So actually, you took some actors who were kind of passers-by, and didn't you? I don't know. Didn't you care about the fact that they would spoil some moments and they would play not in the direction you want to show something, because the risk is too high in this case?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that the risk was too high. You know, for us, this is something that actually we wanted to get into, but we haven't been talking about yet, is that, like, when you're making a film like this, with no money or whatever, you can't really afford to care too much. You know what I mean? You have to be ready to incorporate all the imperfections which come with this type of process. And you have to find a way to bake it in, you know, to bake it into the bread, you know, to make it a part of the film. And so if you watch this film, it's very imperfect. You know, it has many issues which are, you know, obvious. It's not like clean cut, you know, type of Hollywood film. But it adds to the flavor, you know what I mean? But regarding the actors, I think we got lucky, actually. I think because, you know, for me, I was casting really according to people's personalities. And I wasn't really asking people to do a lot of things outside of their own selves, you know? People were really able to embody these characters in a really believable and really actually like really good way. Like, there's a lot of really great performances in the film, you know, especially by these 2 main characters. And actually by almost everybody really did a really good job, you know. And I think that, like, when I see films nowadays and I may feel like somebody's performance is not that good, my first thought is about the director rather than the actor. You know what I mean? Not to say that they're a bad director, but I think that, like, performances oftentimes are the product of, you know, the relationship between the director and the actor. Of course, like the actor and the other actor, but really also the director and the actor. And a lot of times I see directors who don't insist on performances, you know, or don't really know. Yeah, I don't know. I think that, like, sometimes, you know, may not be focused on these performances, and a lot of, like, weak performances, especially like in television, a lot of weak performances are allowed to just slide. A lot of times because there's no time or whatever, but, like, I think that, like, you know, when you spend the time, you can really bring a lot of people can be brought to a really high level of performance, I think. Right, normal people, you know, and this working with non-actors is something that also I get from, you know, watching my parents, because it also is very expensive, you know, to work with, like, actors, you know what I mean? In many ways, it's expensive, and I think that, like, especially for us, it was important to work with people from the community anyway, you know what I mean? Like I said, it was an excuse to get my community on camera, you know, so it was kind of organic to the process.
We actually talked about
Thanks a
this.
lot.
Oh, sorry. We actually talked about this with Krzysztof Zanussi, the prominent Polish director, earlier in the morning, and we asked him how he worked with actors, because that was the topic of the masterclass, and he said that he invites them over for a dinner and for a walk in the woods where he lives, just to have a grasp of what they are and who they are, and to get them into, you know, kind of open them up. So.
Yeah, I wish I remember the director, but I kind of just got it from that type of director, you know, watching them, which is like, if you watch their audition, they're never like, read this line, you know, read this, you know, here, do this, with no preparation or anything like that. It's more so just like, the audition is a conversation. The audition is just like getting to know somebody and like getting a sense for their personality and how close it is to the character that you have in mind. You know what I mean? And or if it's, you know, itself, you know, what you want. You know what I mean? And I think that like that's kind of, you know, our process too. Is like, okay, you know, like what type of person are you? You know, what's your accent? Because like in Washington D.C., the way people speak is very specific. You know, it's like what's your cultural background and like all these other variables. And actual acting was a very small part of it.
Any more questions from the audience?
Oh, and I'm sorry, just to add to that, the other character in the film, not the main character, but the I guess supporting actor in the film, has never acted before, but he had a big role to play. So when we first started, he was doing that type of acting. He was acting, you know, just very loud and, you know, kind of like what he thought I wanted, you know, which is what he sees in Hollywood or what he sees in whatever. And we had to have just a few conversations, you know, just slight tweaks, just about like just reminding him that like, nah, actually like the reason I cast you is because of your own organic and natural self, your own personality, you know. And so like the best thing that you can give us, you know what I mean, is your own normal reactions to the shit that this other guy is doing, you know, your own way of thinking, your own, you know, like that's the good stuff. That's what we're here for. Like everybody here is not, you know, looking for, you know, judging you or you know, like anything, so you know, like judging you about your performance or anything like that. To really just kind of like alleviate him, you know, take the stress off of him to want to be something that he's not, but to just, you know, be himself. And I think he did an incredible job in the film.
Hello, I have a bit strange question. You mentioned that director should edit his own movies. I'm a director and I edited 4 short movies, and I have a problem. In the end, I'm getting really sick of this film. The story that I really loved before, I'm getting sick of it. And have you ever felt the same way? And how to keep this balance to avoid this feeling?
Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, there were times when I didn't, you know, I just felt like it was impossible. I was like, what am I doing? You know, I shot it badly and I can't, you know, the editing is not going well. But, you know, I don't know. Like, I think that, like, again, well, okay, 2 things. 1, I think that, like, space is helpful. I don't know if you're going every single day, editing every single day. But, like, if so, sometimes taking a break is good. So, like, there were many breaks that I had to take, you know. It took a year and a half, but there were many times when I wouldn't touch it for a week or 2, you know what I mean? Or more sometimes, for one reason or another. And then I found when I came back, I was, you know, seeing it fresh, you know? And maybe if you even have to take a month or more, you know what I mean, away from the project, but just knowing that you'll come back to it. But I do think that it's very important to complete the film. You know, I think it's very important to see a process through to the end. Because I think that like by doing so you grow more than if you just kind of started it and didn't finish it. But something else that was helpful for me is showing the film, you know, in whatever stage that it's at. So like I had a whole network of people, you know, friends and family basically, who every couple months or every couple weeks sometimes I show them a cut of the film. And I mean like early on, when it was 3 and 4 hours long, they would like have to sit and watch the movie and give me notes. Or later on, when it was 90 minutes, you know, and they'll watch it and give me feedback. And when you get feedback from people, you know, some people who know nothing about film, and then some people who are filmmakers, you know, you really get fresh perspectives and new ways into your film. You know, do you do any type of feedback? Do you show
yes.
it? Yeah. So how long have you been working on the film, on, let's say, one of the short films?
Films that last 10 minutes. I work about 5 months. I mean, at all 5 months with music, with editing, with everything.
So one of the ones that you're sick of right now, how long have you been editing or working on?
Editing lasts maybe months, 2 months.
And is it every day? Or every couple days?
Almost, yes, every day. You know, even if I'm not editing every day, I keep it in my head every day, and
Yeah,
I'm
for sure.
thinking about it and can't get out of my head.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think that, like, for me, what helped was giving a little space, showing it around to people, and also, yeah, just like going back, you know, until it's done. But I think also, like, maybe it's done, you know? Maybe you just release it as it is, you know? I think sometimes we may want it to be perfect, you know, but what stage would you say? Is it early? Is it rough cut? Is it fine cut? What is yours?
Adobe Premiere.
Huh?
Oh no. What stage are you at with editing the film? Like, how far are you in the process?
Rough? Is it still rough cut?
No, I'm editing till the rough to the fin to the
Oh, okay, to the
final
like,
version.
Yeah, okay. So you're almost there. You know, I don't know. Do you edit? I would try anything. I would try all kinds of things. Add music. You know, I don't know if you already have music, or take the music out. Bring new footage.
I'm working with composers, and
Okay.
I love this part of making movie. This is my favorite, maybe.
Yeah.
But I mean, editing to look all the material that we shooted to put these parts together. That makes sick you. Yes.
Yeah, I think once the music goes to it, it could help you. Yeah, you just got to show up. I think that, like, for me, it became very difficult, but once I kept going, you know, showing up consistently and just sitting there in front of it, just looking at it, you know, sometimes, you know, it gets to a point where it's like, it starts to show you, you know, where you need to go. You know, I believe that's kind of what happened with me in my film. I don't know if it's the same, you know, if it would happen for you, but I think that, like, there's value in just showing up, you know, as often as you can, consistently, until it's done. Yeah, but when you finish, it's difficult now, but, like, when you finish, it's the best feeling, you know, right?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, you're almost there.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
What is the next step now for Residue? Now that it's on Netflix, does it mean it's done now and you leave it and you move to other project, or there's something else you can do with the film?
I think that's pretty much it for Residue. I think, of course, you know, looking for international distribution. You know, of course, looking for you know, more film festivals where it can just kind of like go. You know, for me, it was very.
Can it still go? I'm sorry to interrupt. Can it still go if it's on Netflix and basically anybody can sit through the film? You know, literally now.
Yeah, I mean, it's here, but no, it is able to show in countries where Netflix is not showing.
Okay.
So Netflix is only in English-speaking territories. So the United States, UK, Australia, maybe South Africa. I don't know.
Yeah, Europe as well. So yeah.
Canada.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, like, it was important for me to, like, once it was done, I wanted to go to black cities around the world, you know, where people are experiencing something similar and show it in the communities and stuff like that. So maybe that's still part of it too.
Okay. So what's next for you now that it's done? What's next project you're thinking about or working on already?
Yeah, I'm like very interested in working with my parents. You know, for me, like, I'm not the type of filmmaker that, like, has to get away from my parents and, like, separate myself. I'm very interested in you know, combining all our bodies of work, you know, into, you know, one consistent stream of films coming out of, you know, this Ґеріма kind of family, you know.
They still make films?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Like, if we FaceTime my dad right now, I'm sure editing. You know, he's been working on 2 documentaries recently. One on I told you yesterday about the second time the Italians tried to invade Ethiopia, but another one now. Yeah, like he's been working on it for like 20 years in terms of research and shooting, and now he has like over 200 hours of footage, you know, that he's editing. 25 years, you know what I'm saying? Not editing, but like research for 10, 15, filming for maybe 10, and now 200 hours of footage to edit. So he edits every day. He's in his editing room. If he's not shooting, he's editing or writing. So like that's kind of like the example that I'm always seeing is just like every day, you know what I mean? He's intense. He's intense, but like I think that like it's a good example of like it's good if you have money to pay people, you know, if you can afford an editor or whatever. But like if you don't, what do? You don't make a movie, or do you make a movie? You know, at any cost, you know, no matter what, do you make it? You know, and that's the trade-off, you know.
What's your final succinct motivation to filmmakers?
Well, I used up all my quotes already. I don't know. I just feel like, yeah, like anybody here, if you have your film that you're working on, like anybody, like you want to reach out, show me a cut, or you need, you know, I'm on Instagram, you know, all the time, like feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to talk about these things or help or whatever in any way that I can. That's the best I can do is like, I don't have the answers. All I have is just the example of what I was able to accomplish with my, you know, friends, family, and community. And so, like, if that's helpful to you, you know, if that's inspiring to you, then, like, hit me up anytime. I'm always down to talk. But, yeah, like, greenlight yourself at all times, under all conditions, yeah.
Thank you very much, Meravі, for this talk. Okay. Yeah, we're done. Ну що ж, друзі, на цьому урочистому моменті я оголошую нашу секцію закритою. Це ювілейний кінофестиваль. І це дуже важлива секція, тому що під час неї пройшло дуже багато історичних для молодості речей. Наприклад, серіальний пітчинг. Це дуже новий досвід не тільки для нашого кінофестивалю, а для всієї країни. І я дуже вірю в прекрасне майбутнє для нашої країни в плані кіно. І я вірю, що всі ми долучаємося і створюємо нову кінокраїну з України. Дякую дуже. Я хочу висловити велику подяку всім тим, хто з нами працював і нашій команді. Якщо я когось забула, Вадим, Дмитро, Ігнат, Крило, наші прекрасні волонтери, Наталі, Діана і ще дуже багато людей, які в цій кімнаті знаходяться. Дякую вам дуже. На цьому ми завершуємо нашу індустрійну секцію. Дякую, що були з нами.